A huge part of that is our good friend Pierre LeBrun, our hockey insider, who joins me now. And I'm going to preface this interview by saying everything that Pierre and I talk about, it's as of midnight Eastern time. We're live. People don't always know that. We're live at midnight Eastern. So obviously, Pierre, we have to preface that. Sam Reinhart, we knew as of midnight Eastern, had to sign by midnight Eastern to get that eighth year from the Florida Panthers that he obviously would want. Any update on Sam Reinhart and Florida, Pierre?
Yeah, literally just got an update a few minutes ago before we came on air live, Jay, at midnight Eastern. And the update from someone involved was that things were tracking in a positive sense to get an extension done between Sam Reinhart and the Florida Panthers. I don't know whether it's 8 years or not, but obviously the pressure in the situation would suggest that would make sense. Either way, whether it's 8 years or not, it appears as though both sides are going in the right direction to get this done. And it's not been an easy negotiation for a couple of reasons. I mean, heck, Panthers GM Bill Zito was at a Stanley Cup parade today. The Panthers have had almost no time. They've had no offseason since they won Game 7 just on Monday night. And it's not a negotiation that was, here's the offer, sign it. There's been some back and forth here, Jay. The original offer was, I don't think, where it needed to be for Sam Reinhart. And listen, he's got leverage. He just scored a career-high 57 goals. But, of course, the Panthers have leverage. They just won the Cup, and no one wants to leave South Florida. So we'll see where this ends up going if both sides can get it across the finish line. But seems like positive right now.
Okay, well, and as I'm talking to you about these other subjects, if you want to keep tabs on Florida and Sam Reinhart, you just do your thing. It's funny you say no one wants to leave South Florida. Jake Guentzel is about to test that because the big news on Sunday morning is that Guentzel's rights were acquired by the Tampa Bay Lightning from the Carolina Hurricanes. Any news on a potential deal between Tampa and Guentzel, Pierre?
Yeah, so my understanding is that we should see an announcement Monday morning before the market opens that Jake Guentzel has signed a 7-year deal with the Tampa Bay Lightning. As of tonight, the deal wasn't quite finalized yet. The Lightning had a few things going on, so every dime counts under the cap, but the expectations that will get finalized on Monday morning. A lot of disappointed teams. First of all, Carolina Hurricanes, who traded away his rights once they realized that Jake Guentzel would not sign the 8x8 offer that they presented this week in Vegas. $64 million Carolina offered. I don't know if it was actually physically turned down, but it was not signed. So Jake Guentzel's rights were traded earlier Sunday when Carolina realized they weren't going to get him. And of course, once he got traded, Jay no longer could get 8 years, no matter where he went. But at the end of the day, the Tampa Bay Lightning really became the front runners over the weekend at the draft, as we reported, as soon as they realized that they just could not find enough common ground on re-signing Captain Steven Stamkos, the face of the franchise. So once Tampa felt that, they pivoted and they went after the big fish in free agency.
And, you mentioned Steven Stamkos. It's still so bewildering. And, you mentioned it. Essentially, Tampa's moved on from him. It looks like he's going to free agency. But it's just kind of hard to believe that Stamkos will not end up finishing his career with the Tampa Bay Lightning, Pierre. Any further conversation with Stamkos? And if not, any ideas of where he might end up in free agency?
Yeah, I don't believe there were any conversations between Tampa and the Stamkos camp on Sunday. Again, never say never. When everyone wakes up on Monday morning, stranger things have happened, but certainly there were no conversations on Sunday that I know of. Julian Breezebother, GM of the Lightning, kind of made it clear in his comments to the media after the draft in Vegas on Saturday that pretty much it felt like both sides have moved on. So I know from making a few calls that Stamkos and his agent, veteran Donnie Mia at Newport Sports, were going through all their options on Sunday. A lot of interest in one of the great leaders in the NHL, a 40-goal scorer, still got a lot of juice in that tank, even at 34. No shortage of interest in Steven Stamkos. And certainly, I think the Nashville Predators are the front runners, but I think a lot of teams got in there Sunday, Jay. So let's see what emerges Monday through all this interest to see where Steven Stamkos ends up. But whoever gets him is getting a pretty special guy who is beloved by his teammates in Tampa.
And had a great year last year, too. Leafs busy Sunday, as you know, Pierre, we mentioned it. Max Domi, Timothy Liljegren, Nick Robertson apparently asking for a trade now, and everyone waiting on Chris Tanev. Brad Treliving acquires his negotiating rights. Anything new on Tanev?
Yeah, Chris Johnson, by the way, reporting that Nick Robertson wants out. So just checked before we came on air, and was someone involved in the negotiations on Chris Tanev and said they were still waiting, a lot of back and forth still. It does feel to me like it should eventually get done. And again, it doesn't have to get done tonight, as you know. But it sounds like if the Leafs can get this across the finish line, it's going to be a long-term deal. I think in and around $4.5 million a year. The question is it 5 years, 6 years, 7 years? I'm not 100% sure. But, you know, the longer you can push out a deal like that, the more you can massage the AAV, the cap hit. You know, even though obviously Chris Tanev's 34 years old, but Chris Tanev's always been the #1 UFA target for Brad Treliving, the Leafs GM. Obviously, they were together before, but that's the guy that he's always wanted. He tried to trade for him before this year's trade deadline from Calgary. Didn't get him, but would desperately like to get this deal across the finish line here for Chris Tanev.
Hey, you and Chris Johnston also reported last week on Insider Trading that, you know, it wasn't out of the question that Tyler Bertuzzi would return to the Toronto Maple Leafs, but now with the Domi signing and maybe potentially a Tanev signing, seems more and more unlikely. Anything new on where Bertuzzi might end up?
Yeah, talks broke off on Sunday. Jay, or Darren Dreger, reporting that Bertuzzi was going to market and that basically he had outpriced himself with what the Leafs could do now. And this was always going to be kind of that game of musical chairs where once guys started signing with the Leafs, someone was going to have to start doing the math. So Max Domi signs. There's his cap hit. Liljegren signs. You know, they're grinding away on the Tanev extension, which is the #1 priority. It just wasn't going to work after all those things were happening for Tyler Bertuzzi, who I think his agent feels can go to market Monday and get more term and more money than what the Leafs could, in the end, offer. So, you know, I always felt that it wasn't reasonable for the Leafs to be able to bring back both players, both Domi and Bertuzzi, because both guys were looking for term now after signing one-year deals last year. So it was going to have to be one or the other. And obviously they come back with Domi.
And love this story. Patrick Kane going back to Detroit, though. You know, the Wings did miss the playoffs last season. I don't think Patrick Kane is in the market for rebuilding teams or anything like that. And yet there seems to be such a terrific fit there. Why did Kane ultimately decide to stay in the Motor City?
Yeah, well, there was interest from teams like Buffalo, his hometown Sabres, Rangers, where he played before, to some degree Montreal, if it was a short-term deal, among other teams. Lots of interest in Patrick Kane. And I think with Detroit, at the end of the day, he really enjoyed it there. And I think he needed to really find a reason to have to leave. And the reality is, I don't know how many teams are willing to give him term. And at the end of the day, that was even a stumbling block in the negotiations with Detroit, Jay. I mean, I think at the outset, his camp wanted 3 years. But again, Patrick Kane is fully healthy now, but there's always going to be, at his age, that concern of how's he going to keep looking for a guy that's coming back from hip resurfacing surgery. But, you know, the reality is it's actually Patrick Kane's, this will be his first healthy summer working out in a long time. He feels pretty darn good going into next year. So Detroit just felt like the right thing for him. I think he really needed a lot of incentive to go to market, and the incentive wasn't strong enough. So he goes back to Detroit on a one-year deal, which could be worth up to $6.5 million if he hits all his bonuses, but at the very least, $4 million.
Do you want to take one more look at your phone before we let you go? Just one more quick look.
I have been. We're okay right now. I got to follow up with someone after I go off air, Jay, so
okay.
Check the Twitter feed.
Okay, yeah, check Pierre's Twitter feed. Well, I mean, you guys are all following Pierre's Twitter like I am, like everybody is.